Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to Proper Madness. My name is Sabby, and I give a unique perspective on mental health by providing tools, guidance, and knowledge on how we can better understand ourselves, as well as our past and present experiences, and in doing so, we can help heal our mental health. I get to speak with a variety of individuals from around the world as they share their stories from their journey through their mental wellness so that it helps others stand strong and use their voice. Welcome back, everyone, to Proper Madness. Today, I am blessed to have Shani on my podcast today. He's all about breath work, and then he also talks about cold exposure therapy as well. He's such a lovely, lovely human being, so I'll let him introduce himself and tell you what he's about.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm Shani, and I'm a breathwork instructor and also help people with overcoming fears within the cold exposure. So usually ice baths, cold showers as well, and overall just personal development coach. So these are a couple of modalities that I use as part of a coaching program in order to help people uncover their true self and really connect with who they are. I feel like it's something that was important for me in my journey. So I now feel like I want to share it. So it's a big part of that.
Oh, that's awesome. What got you started in your journey with breath work and cold exposure therapy?
So during like the whole lockdown period, I started to meditate a little bit for like 5 or 10 minutes, but I found it difficult to meditate longer than 5 to 10 minutes. So I looked for other ways and techniques and came across Wim Hof's breathing technique. I'm not sure if you've tried it yourself.
Mm-hmm. A little bit. I tried it. I've just started getting into breath work recently. Like all different kinds, like the alternate nostril breathing. I don't know the names for them. I just know like the counts of them and like what each one does. But I'm very familiar with Wim Hof for sure. I think I've only tried it maybe a couple times.
Yeah, so that's how I got started on breath work. But before that, actually, I took part in a 10-day silent meditation retreat with a friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you're familiar with the Vipassana.
A little bit, yeah.
We were supposed to go on to a Vipassana, but at the time everything was locked down, so it was cancelled. But instead of like just accepting that, we booked a cabin for ourselves and decided to do it ourselves. And actually, at the end of each day, we recorded a podcast of our own understandings and what we felt from that day. That was actually almost 3 years ago now.
Oh wow, that's really cool. What did you find through that retreat and through doing that? Like, I guess a retreat, yeah. Doing the silent meditation, what were some of the revelations that you had?
I think the biggest one was just how overactive and my mind was, and how how I wasn't able to actually control it. It was almost an automatic process. And once you stepped behind, you almost could observe your mind and its patterns working in the act of staying silent for a full day. Because when you're meditating, we did certain types of meditation where it was focusing on certain things or objects. And at that point, you could just almost hear your thoughts and stories come up. And you could see like almost a difference between where you were and where the thoughts and the stories were. It was almost like two separate entities.
That has to be tough to be at home within your own self and your own mind for that long. Well, you said it was like a week? How many days was it?
It was 10 days actually.
Oh, 10, yeah. So same thing. Yeah. Like I feel like a lot of people cannot be alone with their own thoughts and minds and thought patterns and processes. So to do that for 10 days, you must have like come to some sort of understanding of yourself and the why behind your thought patterns. And
Yeah, exactly. I think it was the deeper understanding of the core being of me. So I understood that actually I'm not my thoughts and I'm not my feelings. And these were like concepts that I've read in books before, but I'd
Mm.
never actually like really understood it on a core level until I felt it, that actually I'm not those things. I'm something beyond it that experiences those things.
Mhm.
So anytime afterwards, if even if we bring like the cold shower into an example, now when I go into a cold shower, I don't fall into my emotions and experiences of the cold shower. I kind of observe them from a third perspective,
Mm.
and you can take that view on life.
100%, yeah. And think to be the ultimate observer in your life with what's happening and the thoughts and emotions that you're currently having, no matter the circumstance, right? I think like
Right.
with if you look at trauma, I think a lot of people when traumatic situations happen, there's a lot of thoughts, feelings, and emotions that come into play, and then all of a sudden that's what takes over. That's like your driving entity towards what you do and how you move and how you operate. But I think you put it so well to sit back as an observer of your own thoughts, your mind, and your emotions is key. Because that's how you can start to like pick apart, from my experience, that's how you start to pick apart how to act differently going forward, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It's super key to that. And for me, especially, like I I only got to that point through years of self-inquiry and self-development. But when was like much younger, I went through years of like depression and going through a lot of anxiety to the point where I even tried to commit suicide when I was almost 20 years old. And if I look at the person I was back then compared to now, one of the key differences is like just my inability to separate myself from the thoughts. So anytime I would have a negative thought pattern, I would believe that that is me. So if it's
Mhm.
like someone else would think something negative of me, it would create a reality where I would also feel that negative about myself, and then I would feel like it's true, and then it creates that reality for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so well said. Yeah, the belief systems that we are given from other people and that we give to ourselves is what kind of creates our reality. Was there any instances in your life, like if you want to talk about your story a little bit of like what you've been through? You mentioned anxiety and depression and suicide. Uh, can I
Yeah.
ask about like your story and how that transpired and
Yeah, actually, I recently shared this on my Instagram for the first time, maybe like a few weeks ago.
okay.
And I don't know why I felt the need to share it, but then as I've started to share, I felt more and more acceptance over it.
Mhm.
But it was something that happened 10 years ago. So like I'm 31 now, and this was when I was like 20. So at the time I was studying at university, and I was going through a lot of social anxiety. So I'd go out to like parties and clubs or be around people
Mhm.
and wouldn't really talk too much. So before that year, I went through a couple of years where I just sort of shut off socially, just would stay either playing video games or smoking weed and just doing my own thing.
Mhm.
And people around me were kind of doing similar things. So it would be like we'd hang out together, but not really talk and play video
Mhm.
games or just smoke. And so it for a year, I did pretty much that when I was 20, and it just sort of overwhelmed me in that situation. Um, I was continuously like having these negative thought patterns about myself that I would believe.
Mhm.
So at that moment, my external life was non-existent. I would just be like living inside my head.
Mhm.
And um, yeah, one day I think I decided to just mix some alcohol with some codeine. And there was like some liquid codeine that we'd keep at the apartment just as a something to add to a little bit of alcohol. And I knew if you wanted to add some to the alcohol, there was like a safe amount to take. But then I went and added maybe 2 or 3 times over that limit, and with Jack Daniels, that was pure with no mixer. So I remember drinking it and passing out. And like I did it also when no one was at home. So I think I just fully decided and accepted that my life wasn't worth living and I should just end it at that point. And I remember struggling to wake up, like just like having this feeling of like my eyes were closed, but I was trying to open them. And then a couple of minutes later, I woke up. And the first thing I did was like I went for a walk. I don't know why, but I was in the apartment and I would spend most of my days in that apartment. So I very rarely would leave. But the first thing I needed to do after waking up was go for a walk. And then I decided to just like drop out of uni, move back in with my parents. And that sort of forced me to, in a situation where I needed to get a job and make some money. And also, I wouldn't, living at my parents' house, I wouldn't be able to have the same lifestyle as, just smoking weed, playing video games all day. So that kind of forced me into a different way of living. And then after a few months, I somehow discovered like some personal development books or audio books. I think it was I remember the exact one, but the one that sticks out to me at the time was like How to Win Friends and Influence People. I remember reading like somewhere on some website that this is the book that will change your life or something. So I decided to listen to the audio book, and there were a few others after that. And then, yeah, like just sort of got started on that rabbit hole of trying to improve myself for many years. And for then, like this was in my early 20s. So through that time, I would just be like looking at things that would be like, how can I build on myself and make myself feel better? Because there was a part of me that I didn't accept. And that was a part of me that I wanted to kill myself about. And for that reason, I was just looking at ways to improve myself or add things onto me to make me feel better about myself. But after like doing that for like 5, 6, 7 years, it got to the point where it's like, okay, even though I've done all this work and I've worked on myself for so long, there's still, this is all built on a belief that I'm worthless. So it's like I'm trying to run away from that belief by adding things onto it. And that's when I started to get into meditation and more self-reflection. So it's like going into that core belief and try to work on that before trying to like build things onto it. It's almost like building a house with like shitty foundations, and at the end everything will crumble. Yeah, and that sort of brought me into the path of breath work. Eventually, I've experienced many forms of personal development and working on myself. I've had like psychedelic experiences with all sorts and everything, different types of healing modalities. But I found that actually with our breath, we have the most power to perform our own inner healing. And it's just a case of learning how to use it.
Yeah, I am. Is it somatic breath work where, I don't know, you have to educate if I get this wrong, I apologize. Is it somatic breath work where there's one time I went to a sound bath, and I remember also doing breath work coupled with it to release like those stuck emotions that we have deep inside from the traumas that we've been through. Is that I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Explain like what that is. And also thank you for sharing your story. Like I think a lot of people can resonate with that, with being in a place where you feel very hopeless and like you don't feel like you have the motivation to go on. And I think a lot of people have been there, and to get yourself out of that though and have that mindset shift of, okay, I don't want to be like this anymore, I want to figure out a way through it, is wonderful. And the way you explained like trying to build a house with shitty foundations, true. I think when you try to dive into any sort of personal development, if you haven't healed those core beliefs or that root trauma or those emotions first, you can't build anything off of it. then you just kind of keep repeating the same patterns and cycles over and over and over again. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, that's what I experienced in my journey, uh, in that way for sure. And yeah, about your question for the breathing exercises. So there's different types of breathing, and I feel like one of the biggest problems in today's market with breathwork in general is that there's
Yeah.
probably a lack of education
Oh,
for the mass
100%.
people.
Yeah.
So everyone's heard of Wim Hof, but if I was to ask you like, what is Wim Hof style breathing useful for, and what is it not useful for, you probably would not know, and same for most people.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
no, I have no idea. No
yeah,
clue.
so the Wim Hof style of breathing is actually he uses like a hyperventilative style, so
Mm.
it's short inhale, short exhale, kind of rapid. He uses a lot of breathing from the mouth, so that's useful for a certain reason. In the long term, it's probably not the best style to be using every day because you breathing from your mouth instead of your nose.
Mm.
And as I'm sure you're aware, like if you breathe in from your mouth, you take in all of the toxins in the air, whereas our nose has like a built-in filtering system
Mhm.
that only takes in what's required.
Yeah.
So the breathing style for like doing like sort of hyperventilative breathing actually is something that can trigger your fight or flight system. So those are the ones where traumas can be triggered and released. So typically, if you breathe, it doesn't have to be specifically hyperventilative as well. There's ways of doing that through uh, just like the breathing style that I do, which is more nasal breathing by Soma.
Mm.
So you're mentioning somatic breathing,
Yeah.
but I think maybe you meant Soma.
I think so. Yeah. See, I'm not
Yeah.
very educated about about breath work.
Okay.
Yeah, there's so much I think still to learn about breath work. I think somatic breath work is a term that I see floating around a lot. And then I see like
Right.
these videos of like people screaming and yelling through the
Yeah.
breath work. Yeah. So that's how my brain processes it
Right.
and sees it. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. Breathwork is that there is that aspect to it, but it's also about becoming aware of how you're breathing minute to minute. So improving the way that we breathe. I think I'm not sure if you're familiar with pranayama.
Yeah.
It's so yeah, if you've done any like form of yoga in the past, maybe they may uh, do like some sort of pranayama
Yeah.
session in your class. And pranayama is like based on an ancient Indian text, and a lot of that was created based on studying animals and the way animals breathe. So within the animal kingdom, there's a direct correlation between the amount of breaths an animal takes per minute and how long they live.
Oh wow.
So if you look at like a mouse, they breathe hundreds of times a minute and they only live for like 1 or 2 years. Whereas like there's some like whales that only breathe once or twice a minute and they live for hundreds of years,
Oh
or at least 100
wow.
years. And if you go across the whole like scale, like dogs and tigers and cats and all of them, there's a direct correlation between the average breaths per minute that they take and how long they live. And as humans, we have like the conscious ability to control how many breaths we take per minute, but we're not in control of that because throughout our day, the way we breathe is this, it's sort of conditioned by the way we've breathed up until now and also our habits and routines.
Mm.
So someone may breathe up to 40 times per minute, someone else might breathe up to 20 and a range in between. So if you consider that, it's actually may have a big impact on your health as well.
Wow. I didn't know any of that. Oh, you just blew my mind with that. But I feel like it makes sense, right? Because if you're breathing more often, do you think you're more in a flight or fight response, like based off of adrenaline and all that, and then like triggers your immune system a bit more, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. So we have two systems within our body within the autonomic system. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the sympathetic nervous system and the
Mhm.
parasympathetic nervous system.
Yes.
So our, yeah. So our sympathetic nervous system, that's our fight or flight response. So that's triggered through hyperventilative breathing, and it's when we feel like scared and we have this like fight or flight. We're not sure what to do, and I'm sure many of us have experienced that throughout many times in our life. And the only reason to activate that through a breathwork session is in order to bring up the traumas, like you said. So if you are with a guided professional, they can allow you to bring them up and release them and scream and have those experiences. So that's why we would bring up that sort of breathing for breathwork sessions. But the parasympathetic nervous system, that's our rest and digest. So that's normally activated when we feel calm and relaxed and there's not worry in the world.
Mm.
And this is something that we can activate consciously by the main way to kick this into gear is nasal breathing and extending your exhale. So making sure your exhale, the way when you breathe out, is at least twice as long as your inhale. So if you do that for like 5 minutes consciously, it will actually make you feel calm. And like one of the biggest misconceptions that people have is like if they want to sit, they say like, oh, if you want to feel calm, take a deep breath. But taking a deep breath doesn't actually make you feel calm. It's having a longer exhale that will make you feel calmer.
Ah, that's good to know. Yeah, because thinking back to any time I've felt anxious and I've tried to do breathing, like anytime I feel anxious, I'll dive into meditation and try to just calm my mind down. But if I think about it, it's because my breathing is slower. My exhales are probably longer. I don't know if you know about this app. There's an app that I started using called Open, and they have like tons of breath work on that app. And this morning I did one where I think it helps you concentrate and focus and stay more present. And I swear my brain was going like a million miles an hour, and the breath count was breathing in for 5, out for 5, and then after the out you'd hold for 3 and then continue that for a few minutes. And right afterwards I was completely present. It's the shift in your mind and your thought process with breath is so linked. And I think a lot of us don't know that at all. And you're explaining it so well. I think it's gonna honestly educate a lot of people who don't understand that just the basic tool that we're born with can help us in so many ways.
Yeah, it's super powerful because it's literally the only thing that we do from the moment we're born until the moment we die, yet we're never taught how to use it. We're
Yeah.
taught everything else, but we're never taught the one thing keeping us alive. And people think, oh, it's not important. It's like, oh, it happens. We just breathe anyway. But yeah, wouldn't you like to know how to do the only thing keeping you alive?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, there's so many benefits with breath work, and but do you want to talk about some of those things that people can understand that it helps with?
Yeah. So, like I was mentioning, between the two different systems that we have, the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, and if we extend our exhales, that actually activates the parasympathetic nervous system. But you mentioned also the breath holds as well.
Mhm.
So the breath holds are extremely important within the breathwork session. And what that allows you to do is it creates like a positive stress response, and it forces your body into a situation where it feels like it's almost like tricking your body into thinking that you're dying, but you know that you're not dying. So you're kind of creating that system within your body so it sort of kicks it into gear, and there's like emergency cells are sort of being reproduced and any dead cells are being replaced. So that's why during some of our breath holds, we do them for up to like a minute or could be longer. And during that time, after like 20 minutes of continuous breathing and breath holds, people have like transcendent experiences because you're actually recreating the cells inside your body as well. So it's
Ah, that makes sense. Yeah, because when I would go to sound baths coupled with breath work, and I would have it would feel like unfortunately did a lot of drugs in college, substance abuse, but it would feel like I had just taken psychedelics, because some of the things that I would see and experience and the revelations that I would have mentally and emotionally were of that same cadence. And I remember the first time I did it, I went with a really good girlfriend of mine, and I came out, I go, I feel like I did drugs. Like, I'll be honest, I really feel like I had like a completely different experience. And I had those epiphanies. I had those realizations that, the release of the emotions, but also some of the higher consciousness level downloads that I was getting, that I thought I would be getting, if I had taken something. And so, yeah, you're right. It's crazy how that can happen. It just it's interesting. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. And it's funny you mentioned the psychedelics as well, because that was my experience when I first got into breathwork.
Yeah.
And why I decided to go into it so much was because I've had some similar guided psychedelic experiences myself. I even had an ayahuasca experience. And although you don't experience like the visual side of it too much through the breathwork, like the revelations and the downloads and the connection you feel through it is very similar. And yeah, one thing that I learned recently about the mechanics of the breath work compared to the psychedelics, it's actually quite similar. So there's a part in our brain called the default mode network. And this is like a collection of neurons that's like responsible for creating your sense of ego, your sense of self. And it registers like your perception of past and future. And whenever we take psychedelics, this is usually shut down. And so that when you have psychedelics, you don't really know who you are and you feel like you're everything and there's no past or present. It's all just one. The same thing happens during certain types of breath work. So if we do like rhythmical breathing over 20 minutes or longer, there's actually a study being done right now by some universities on breath work, comparing them to psychedelics. And yeah, it's an interesting feel because it has like a similar effect.
That's crazy. I had no idea. I had no idea, but it makes sense. It lines up with how I think, I don't know, like how your brain, I don't know. I'd be so interested to see some of those studies done, because I know psychedelics generally right now is like microdosing is like a huge topic with bettering mental health. But like, if your breath can do the same thing, then there's so much more opportunity for someone to experience those same benefits without having to worry about like the legalities of it and all of that. So yeah. Do you want to talk about the cold exposure therapy as well? And I just started doing cold exposure therapy. I started taking cold showers in the morning, and it was the best thing. Oh, I started it because I started getting more curious about cold exposure therapy. I did cryotherapy years and years and years ago. And I noticed that when I was doing something like that, my anxiety was little to none. I was more present. My inflammation was down. So then I thought, well, I don't want to keep paying bloody money for cryotherapy. I guess there has to be a different option. So I looked into like some of those ice baths, how to do that, taking cold showers, and cold shower is like the quickest thing that you could do. So I do that straight in the morning when I get up after I work out, and my nervous system's just a lot more centered. And it's something that like I feel like I can't really go a day without. And if I do, I notice the difference.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear. I feel like so many more people are open for this now. Yeah, I've personally been taking cold showers for about maybe 3 or 4 years. But I live in Portugal, so it's quite warm most of the time. So it's quite easy to just jump in the cold shower. But I started it actually for the same reasons. Like I was feeling a little bit like lazy, lethargic, and I noticed that warm showers would actually add to that, especially in a hot country. So then I looked into the health benefits of it, and yeah, it's so much like reducing inflammation, but there's also like the mental resilience that it builds in you. Because at first it's not a pleasurable experience. it's actually like you go in and you feel like, what is this? Why am I putting my body through this? Like showers were enjoyable, and now I'm like, right.
I used to enjoy showers. Now
Yeah,
it's like a resilience test. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I would like, yeah, first kind of it would be like a battle against the shower and see
Mm.
like, okay, can I last a minute? Can I last 2 minutes? Let's see. But over time, I've got to a point where now I just go in and I relax into it. I just feel like, how long does it take me to relax into the experience and sort of trick my brain into feeling like it's pleasurable?
Mm.
And you can do that, and you can do the same with the ice bath as well.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so I've been running like ice bath events for a little bit now, and I posted some videos on my Instagram. And actually, we had in my last session, like everybody who turned up, I think only one person had tried it before. So it was like 10 people who'd never experienced ice baths. And
Oh,
yeah, it was incredible for them. It's all sort of like your own personal journey and your own personal battle into there. But the people who ended up staying in the longest were the ones who didn't try to fight or battle against it, but just relaxed into it and just um, kind of went with it, went against what their mind was telling them, that this is painful, and then go past a certain barrier and until you feel like it's actually a pleasurable experience.
oh, that's like life though too, right? And anything you experience in your emotional world. I think the more people resist anything in life, be it cold or emotions or like any feelings that you're feeling at the time and experiences that are uncomfortable, the more you resist it, the more you're gonna feel the pain and the shitty emotions and the all the anxiety and everything. Or same with like cold exposure therapy. The more you resist it, the more you're gonna feel it. But if you just like sit back and allow it to just happen and be in that moment, like that's the best thing you can do. And so yeah, that's why I started looking into the cold exposure therapy too, of building that mental resilience. And then the benefits afterwards are just so like you feel more present, you feel more calm, your nervous system's more you just feel more grounded, like way more grounded.
Yeah, yeah, and it's exactly that. It's like your ability to just relax into a stressful situation and not have your mind running around. So what you're doing is you're creating a stressful situation in your life and you're training yourself to remain calm in stressful situations. So it is a great teacher for life. And
Yeah.
that's what I've been using it for, is like, okay, if my life feels like it's falling apart, I just bring myself back to the cold showers and
Yeah.
just everything is calm. And again, it's like identifying with the observer, not the falling in with the emotions and of the moment.
Yes.
Bringing that state of presence to your everyday life and everything that you do, and not just in the moment when you're in the shower or in the cold bath, but actually bringing it into your life.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned that you started now a little bit of cold exposure. You had some experience with Wim Hof and some breath work sessions.
Hmm.
But yeah, I was interested, like what got you interested in this field? Was it more like the health benefits you mentioned, or spiritually? Was there something calling you?
I think a little bit of both. I think the health benefits called me first, and then
Mm,
the spirituality afterwards. Because I'm a big advocate of what we do in our lives and our daily habits and our health and our wellness through what we eat, what we consume, how if we work out, like all I mean, even the foods that we're consuming can contribute to our mental health. Because if you have a food allergy or a food like resistance to some sort of food, it's going to directly affect your mind and your gut. Like they're all linked, right? The gut's like the second brain.
right,
So I started thinking, okay, well, if I'm noticing that my fight and flight response is triggered right now due to some PTSD triggers, let me figure out a way to reset my nervous system so I'm more grounded and I'm able to be more emotionally present. I'm able to be more emotionally available, and I have greater bandwidth mentally and emotionally to be the best me that I could be, which then contributes to like my relationships. So for me, it was looking at cold exposure therapy. Like, I think I was just scrolling on Instagram one day and I went, I'm seeing all these ice baths. I'm like, what are these crazy people doing? If I go look at all the health benefits that they say that they're having from it, I think it's something that I should worth looking into. So I started slow. I got offered to do like an ice bath one time with a friend of mine who lives locally. He was like, hey, like I have an ice bath. If you ever want to try it. And I was like, okay, let me try it. And I did. And I was in there, I think, for 3 minutes, which is long. It felt like forever. But he was surprised, I guess, at how long I could stay in it for my very first time. But I think it's largely due to the fact though that I had done cryotherapy previously. So I had some knowledge of like what something like that would feel like. Um, but yeah, I remember getting into the ice bath and going, this was dumb. I was like, why did I do this? And then your mind starts going. You're like, you start having more anxiety at first. You go, are my limbs gonna fall off? Am I like, am I gonna get hypothermia? Am I gonna die? And then you think like, is this a safe temperature for me to be in? And then eventually, I think around like a minute and a half, all those thoughts left. And I just remember being more present and relaxing into it and then going, oh, no, what this makes me feel like is more resilient. It makes me feel, if I'm being honest, it made me feel like a total badass. I was like, yeah, no, okay, I'm gonna just like tough this out and go through it and have that resilience and grit. And when I got out of it, the rest of the day, actually, maybe even like a couple days after, I noticed my nervous system was very centered. People told me I was more present in conversations. And I'm very big into spirituality. I felt like my vibration was no longer in a low vibrational state. I was a little bit more in alignment with myself and my energy and my inner me and my authenticity, as opposed to living outside of myself. I felt like I came back home to myself, which sounds kind of crazy, but that's how it felt. And then after that, I went, well, I can't go to my friend's house every day and just use his bath there. That's really strange. I can't do that. So let me find my own way to do this. And so I looked up cold showers, and that's when that kind of just changed the game for me. Because for me, it's quick. If I can incorporate something into my wellness routine, that's going to help me mentally and emotionally. That's efficient and easy, because people are just innately lazy for the most part. They want something quick and easy, like to incorporate. So at that point, then it just became a habit, because I work out early in the morning. And so I went, well, this is perfect. That I have a shower at the gym. I can just hop in the gym right afterwards before I get ready for work and start doing cold showers. And I noticed like my productivity was higher. I struggle with ADD, and that just kind of went out the window too. And I went a few days without taking a cold shower, and I noticed how dysregulated I was, how anxious I was. I was not very present at all. So yeah.
That's great. Wow. What about with breathing? I remember you mentioned that you did like those sort of breathing exercises in, out, and hold, and also a little bit of meditation. So what sort of experience do you have with that?
So my very first time diving deep into releasing the emotions and traumas trapped in our bodies was through a sound bath, like I had mentioned earlier, and it was coupled with breath work. So I went with a really good friend of mine. She was, Sabby, you have to come to this sound bath with breath work. She was, your hands are going to turn into lobster hands, but you can't fight it. You have to let it happen. I go, what the heck is she talking about? And so then I went, and I remember beforehand like being terrified, because the way that they had explained this breath work and what would happen and what you'd be feeling was, hey, a lot of emotions are going to come up for you. And when that happens, you need to release them. And so I went, no, I don't think so. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. It did. I remember they started the sound bath, and the breath work was I don't know if this is Wim Hof or not, but it was like 2 breaths in, like one in your diaphragm, one into your gut, and then you're breathing out. And that was it. You just kept doing that over and over and over again. And eventually I started hearing people around me crying. I started hearing people around me screaming. And they kept repeating over and over, like, don't focus so much on everything else. Focus more on what you're feeling and what you're thinking. And I remember within about, I mean, it was a long breath, like it was a long breath work. I think maybe 10, 15 minutes. I don't know. It felt like forever. And my hands, I was like so focused on my hands that I was like, oh, I'm just so focused on the fact that my hands are getting numb, like I can't move them. And then all the overthinking happened, and then I started getting really sad, and I remember crying and crying and crying and crying and just sobbing. And then afterwards it went into the sound bath, which was like a deep meditation, but it felt like a psychedelic experience to me in a way, because I felt like I was seeing all these ethereal experiences energetically of like people that have hurt me in my past, and me going almost through like this journey of letting these people go in like my own little world. I don't know how to explain it, but it's like I think we all have our own inner worlds energetically, mentally, and emotionally, and there's where we can do some of our best shadow work, because everything's connected. Our energy is connected to every person, every experience, everything. And so for me to like let go of some of those things, the sound bath allowed me to get into such a deep meditative state that I could dive deep into these experiences and understand and learn the lessons that maybe consciously I wasn't aware of, and then to let go of them. So to put both those things together for me was so transformative. I've been to 3 or 4 of those, and then COVID happened and they stopped doing it. So I remember trying to figure out my own way to do it, and I went, ooh, I don't know if I want to do the bloody breath work unsupervised. So I'm like, I feel like that's a really bad idea, because what if I don't stop? You never know, because you kind of go into a trance. So that was that experience with breath work. And then recently, I've just been educating myself more and more, because I got into coaching as well with like mental wellness. And so I went, well, there's daily ways we can incorporate these experiences that I have had into my own life, where I'm still doing the same, because I think our body and our energy hangs on to our emotional experiences, and we don't know it, which is why spirituality is just so huge for me, because everything's energy. Every single thing is energy. Your emotions are energy, and those experiences still carry weight into your daily being and routine, and therefore your reality can reflect that based off of what you're doing and what you're attracting. So then I got thrown into manifestation as well. It's like a whole thing. So all of that for me has just kind of combined into one. And so yeah, it's been almost transformative for me. This morning I did that other breathing exercise I told you about, just because I felt like I wasn't present in this moment. Because anytime I have heightened emotional experiences, I always know, okay, if I stay in that heightened state, I will not be thinking clearly at all in any way. So I need to find a way to come back down to center, so I feel at home within myself.
Wow. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Of course, I just went on a tangent. I just completely went, but yeah.
No, that's great. It's good to hear about your stories and your experiences with this as well. It's because I think there's a lot to unpack there. And you mentioned that you do coaching as well. This is something that I use as part of my coaching practice now, as a way to bring my clients' level of energy and consciousness up, so that when I'm communicating with them, I'm not communicating with their own blocks or their own lack of awareness. Because sometimes when you just have a conversation with someone, you're not actually talking to them, you're talking to all of their fears and emotions and all of their blocks. And I found that after a breathwork session to start the coaching, actually raise their vibration, and that whenever I coach after that, the information sort of filters through easier and they're able to implement it because it's almost like talking directly to their subconscious minds. So,
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think people walk around and interact with everyone around them in their ego about like 80% of the time, and they're unaware of it. Like you're reacting and responding from head instead of your heart center, and your emotional body, because it's scary. I think you feel vulnerable when all those blocks are up, you feel safe. But as soon as they come down, it's almost scarier to interact with other people that way. But you actually have the most beautiful experiences with other human beings through that, because then you can really connect to them and see them for who they are. So I think it's wonderful that you do that. I think that's really, really smart. Okay, so my last question for you is, if anyone resonated with anything that you talked about today, what would be the advice that you would give them?
I would say, like we've shown today, the most important thing is like your education on something. So if you want to get into cold therapy or for ice baths or cold showers or breath work, first know exactly what it is that you're trying to achieve. Like if you want to calm your nervous system down, you do not want to start doing a breathwork session that will activate your fight or flight system. So actually learn about the differences, learn about the types before just jumping into something, and then go out and have an experience, try it, see if it works the way you want it to, or give it a chance. Maybe you may not like the cold shower initially, but give it a few goes before writing it off. And yeah, I would say like the most important thing in your life literally is your ability to breathe. So I would suggest everybody to really pay more attention to the way you're breathing on a minute to minute basis. And if there are things in your life that causes you more stress, just try and learn how to regulate your nervous system and calm your breathing down.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate it. Do you want to tell everyone where they can find you on like social media and all the things?
Yeah. So if you want to get in touch with me, I'm at Inspire with Shani on Instagram, and also just started on TikTok as well, and YouTube as well. So that's my on everywhere. Yeah, if you want to get in touch, just Instagram's the main platform. So just follow me over there and say hello.
Thank you so much for listening. And remember, you have to go through the eye of the storm to see the clear horizon ahead. Thanks so much, guys, and I'll see you next week.